Hey there, I'm Alan Furstenberg,
I'm Linda.
and welcome to this week's Two Voice Devs.
But I'm not really a voice tip.
Well, we've expanded it a little bit.
Okay.
Anyway, welcome, Linda. Good to have you on the show.
Thanks for having me. You've been bugging me for the last couple of weeks. Gotta get you on. Gotta get you on.
Past couple of weeks, I've been bugging you for the past couple of years to come on the show.
Yeah, but I never really had anything valid because I am not, in my opinion, a voice dev.
Well, but what you are is so for those that don't know, Linda is also a GDE. We've known each other now for 10 years as GDEs.
Yes.
And you've, for most of that time, been an analytics GDE.
Yeah, I got identity in 2015 when they basically threw that at us. Yeah. Everybody that asked for it, basically. So, yeah.
But as an analytics GDE, when we were doing voice stuff, it was very important for us to know, to look into analytics type stuff. So yeah. I thought that made a great deal of sense to have you on that. And this was when Google was revamping their analytics systems. So, I thought it would make sense to kind of talk about where Google's analytics were going and maybe how it dovetailed with what you would want to do as voice. But all that's behind us now because we're talking about something else, sort of, instead. But so we know you're an analytics GD. Why don't you talk a little bit about kind of how you got there, how you got started in programming, and how your career path up to that point? I
started programming probably somewhere around when I was about 13 years old. My dad got me the Intellivision, not the Atari, because we didn't have the Atari. We weren't that cool. We had the Intellivision instead. And you could get a computer keyboard to go to it. And so I started just like typing in, I think it was some weird form of BASIC. So that's when I got my first taste of programming. But it's not really where I got my first taste because my mom actually worked with the old IBM mainframes back in the 70s.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, so I basically come from a programming background. Now, my mom left when I was about 12, so I was raised by my dad, but I still knew that my mom did programming, so I knew that it was a thing that women could do programming, right? And then, of course, I was raised in the 80s and I saw War Games and I saw Short Circuit and I'm like, oh, I got to do that. I want to be able to talk to a computer. I want to be able to talk to another life form that is not us or something. I don't know, but it was just kind of like always interesting. It was always in the back of my mind. I wasn't the best of teenagers. I'll have to admit that. And I burned quite a few bridges, but eventually I realized that if I wanted something out of my life, I needed to do something. So I think it was about 19 or 20 when I decided I wanted to go to college. And there just happened to be a local university that was offering a beginner programming computer science course. So I basically called up my dad and I ate some crow. And I said, will you still help me go to college? Will you pay for it? And he said, yes, I'll do it. And he did. So basically the reason I started programming is because I was curious and I wanted a job where I knew that I could pay for the things that I wanted in life without requiring having a relationship and being with somebody else. I wanted to be able to support myself, which was fine. And I did. I managed to get through, school pretty, wasn't that bad.
That's absolutely fine. I feel like nowadays we see a lot of people who are criticizing people who want to get into the industry because it's a good, it makes a good salary. And I think that's gatekeeping. People can join for whatever reason they want.
Well, I mean, I would have loved to be a surgeon, but honestly, I like sleep.
So you became a computer programmer because you liked sleep. That one doesn't cut it.
I would have loved to be like an artist or something, but the whole starving artist idea just didn't play, didn't sit well with
It's
me.
not
And I said,
appealing.
no,
Yeah.
no, it's not. No. So yeah, I wanted something. And the thing is I can do it. And I've always maintained that when it comes to programming, I mean, some people nowadays, it may not be as valid nowadays, but back in the day, you either could program or you couldn't. You had to have that analytical mind to be able to problem solve and look at a problem and see the possible solutions in the form of code. And back before the internet, it was hard for people to grasp it. So I saw a lot of people come into these classes, and it was, you could see the look of blank on their face. They just, it just never clicked with them.
Do you feel that's easier these days? What is it that's changed about programming, maybe, that's made that easier? I mean, excluding what's happened in the past year. But
Well, honestly, I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that the kids nowadays, or kids, I'm sorry, I'm 50 years old, kids nowadays, people nowadays have grown up with computers and the concept of computers, whereas back in the early 90s, nobody had any idea what a computer was. They didn't know what it could do. They didn't know how to use a mouse. They didn't know how to use a keyboard. They didn't, they're starting off fresh, and but whereas nowadays, everybody knows what a computer is, and they have that basic understanding.
Back then, machines were treated as magical, and these days they're not treated as magical. There may be things you don't understand, but people who are starting out with them don't see it as magic. They see it as a tool, and they just need to learn a different part of that tool. Yeah,
exactly. It's just programming is just another language. That and the languages we have nowadays are a lot easier to use or to understand. I started with Pascal, and I mean, I've looked at assembly, and that'll give anybody a headache. So, I mean, the languages that we have now, like, Python, .NET, and maybe not Java, but I mean,
I'll take issue with you there, but
yeah, well, we have, but I mean, some languages, they're easier to understand, and as soon as you know one, it's not hard to learn another. I mean, I've technically only professionally coded in probably 2 languages, but I know probably 10 more because I answer the questions on Stack Overflow from them. I can answer questions on Stack Overflow for anything from R to Ruby to whatever. Doesn't mean I'm a programmer. It just means I can give you a
one of the things,
answer.
Right. One of the things I feel like is most challenging in a lot of cases is if I'm programming in a language, I need to know how to think in that language rather than translate from a language that I'm used to whatever that language is. But when I'm helping someone in that language, it's easier for me to say, okay, I can kind of see what this is doing. Maybe you need to do this. Here are the approaches you should look at. So it's easier to understand a language than to think in and program in that language. And
well, I've been able to do that with everything except for JavaScript. For some reason, I mean, my brain just it's fighting me on JavaScript and TypeScript and all of those languages, and I don't know why. I don't understand why. It shouldn't. I mean, you've been helping me for years trying to get to the point where I am now, which I can make stuff work in AppScript, and AppScript is technically JavaScript-ish. So I mean, but sometimes I get myself into these holes and I can't debug them. I have no idea what's wrong. It doesn't work. It should work. I would hope it would work, and I don't know why.
And it's always funny you say that, because I'm the same way with Python. I mean, I've done some stuff in Python, and every time I'm like, this is a fine language. I don't see anything wrong with the language, but why? I just can't wrap my brain around it sometimes.
And Python's just easy for me. I can spit anything out in Python. I can spit stuff out in Python faster than I can in .NET now. And I've been a .NET developer for 12 to 13 years.
So let's talk about that a bit. So you've been a .NET developer.
Yep.
I know that you had been working for a variety of companies.
Yep.
How did you become a GDE?
I was working for, there's a company here in Denmark called Target. It's not Target, the company in the US. It's Target with an I think. It's spelled differently. They have something similar to Power BI. It's a business intelligence application, really complex. So I was working for Target, and everything that they do, all the data was loaded into SQL Server integration services, right? Which builds multi-dimensional databases instead of the normal relational databases. So one of the things they asked me to do was to see if I couldn't figure out how to import the data from Google Analytics into that so that they could load it into a business intelligence application, which was fine. I'd never built an SSIS test before. I actually think that was one of the first projects that I built all by myself. You know, I designed it and everything. So it was pretty scary that was the first .NET project that I built. So basically, while I was working on that, back then there was like zero documentation for the Google.NET Client Library. I mean, absolutely non-zip, zero, zilch, nothing. So basically I reinvented the wheel and did it myself. But one of the things that I wanted to be able to do was to display to the user the dimensions and metrics that were allowed in Google Analytics, because they were releasing a new version of Google Analytics, and the dimensions and metrics, they were adding new ones. Right. So I wanted to be able to list to the user so that they could go in and pick, I want to see this dimension, these metrics, and then have it automatically go and select the data for them. So I just happened to post a message over on the Google Analytics issue forms. I got an email not that long after, maybe a week after, from Pete, the leader of the Google Analytics dev team, saying, hey, we're working on this API, which will give you a list of all the dimensions and metrics you want to beta test it for. And I'm like, this is the first time an email comes through with @google.com. And do you remember that feeling?
Yes.
You know, it's like, oh my God, I start shaking. I didn't know if to laugh or cry. And I'm like, hell yeah.
Right. It's this person who seems almost godlike to you.
Yeah, godlike. It's like God. And now, after 10 years, we realize they're not gods.
They're not. I mean, they're wonderful people. I love.
Yeah.
The people
But they're just people,
but,
just like the rest of us. Yeah. You know, they're just people like the rest of us. You know, I had the same thing the first time I got an email from John Skeets. That's
different. John Skeets
that was the first few of those that I got, and I still, when I email him back, I do like 5 or 6 checks on my mail to make sure that everything's right.
So anyway. No. I want to touch on that one briefly. For those of us not in the .NET world, briefly say who John Skeets is.
John Skeets is a .NET developer. He works for Google. He's written several books on .NET, but I guess he's best known for the fact that he has the highest rating on Stack Overflow right now. Yes. Which is somewhere around 1.3 million points on Stack Overflow. So he's the guy to go to.
And he was the first person to get past 1 million. And I think right now there are only 2 people.
Yeah, I think there's 2 other ones now. Okay. I think there's 3 of them that have it. So where were we? So yeah, Pete contacted me and asked me to test it. And I went ahead and tested it. And I asked him, you know, can I use this in production? He's like, yeah, sure, go ahead. So we used it in production. And I think it was about 6 months after that, he said, hey, we're starting up this new program here at Google. called Google Developer Experts. Can I nominate you to be a Google Developer Expert for Google Analytics? And I'm like, well, probably not going to cost me anything. No, I'm not going to say no. Sure, let's see what happens. So I got on, I think at the time, I think I only had to do one meetings call with him. What was it back then? It was like Hangouts or something back then. I did one chat with them. And we just chatted, and basically, he didn't even ask me any questions. I asked him questions because I wanted clarification to how the OAuth stuff was working. And I had a couple of bugs and issues and stuff like that. So basically I ended up taking over the call, which is kind of like what I do anyways in the identity calls anyways. Normally I take them over.
It feels like that's what we do a lot in the calls that we have with Googlers. And
I got a chance. Hey, I've got you here. I need to know why this doesn't work. And is this supposed to work?
And I feel like they like that because
they love it.
It validates the fact that, somebody's using their product and that somebody understands it well enough to dig beneath the surface on it, to find the edge cases or find the issues and, show why anybody would want to use an API. So you're a GDE for analytics. These days you're a consultant. You consult for clients directly these days, correct?
Yeah. I've been freelance since December 2019. So it was just before COVID went through. I was working through a company, so they basically hired me out and I worked through them type of thing, but it was still freelance work that I was doing. I wasn't actually working for the company that I was doing the work for. And I've been doing that for a while. The first couple of years, it was like full-time projects, mostly .NET. So, I was building, I'm back end when it comes to .NET. I do back end work, a lot of microservices. I really like working with microservices, basically because I like to keep things compartmentalized. I don't do much front end, which is probably why JavaScript and I don't get along. But I don't have the patience for front end. Somebody else can make it look pretty. I'll make it work. I'm happy with that.
No, that makes sense. And I know, so you and I as GDEs recently got kind of, what's the best way to put this? Tasked with, as all of the GDEs have, to take a look at Google's line of AI products or AI APIs for developers. And in particular, they wanted us to work with the MakerSuite and the PaLM API set of products. And you and I had a couple of conversations about approaches for it. How much had you been playing with generative AI stuff before that challenge came along?
Do you remember back when I was playing with Dialogflow?
Yes.
All right. How long ago was that? 3 years
ago? That
was
was 3 years ago or so.
Yeah. All right. Do you remember how I was never able to figure it out? That is the extent of my knowledge of working with AI programmatically. I've been playing with ChatGPT for probably 4 or 5 months, but not their API, just the actual website. That's all I've been doing.
So what was it about MakerSuite that felt easier, that felt different for you?
Well, MakerSuite to me felt a lot like ChatGPT. It's not exactly like ChatGPT because it's not the conversational thing that you have with ChatGPT, but you're able to just put in your the prompt that you want, and it'll spit out the results. And I think that's why in early days when we just got access, you and I spent a while just asking you stupid questions. Or
well,
not
they weren't stupid questions.
No, they were beginner questions. Like, okay, but why would I want to do this?
Yeah.
And I'm like, and I was like, yeah, but what's this? What do I need this for? And I just kept asking you these questions. And then all of a sudden you said, but what if you make it return JSON? And I'm like, oh, and it's like this giant light bulb just went off. And I'm like, oh, wait a minute.
Right.
Now
I think,
I get it. And that's when I just kind of disappeared on you for a couple of days. And I came back and I says, hey, look what I just did.
and then I gave you the opposite. What if you fed it JSON?
Yeah, what if you fed it, Jason? Yeah.
And then I lost you again for another couple of days.
Yeah.
No, I think, I think I've said this a few times, and I very firmly believe it, that these are transformer models. These are good at turning one thing into another thing.
Yeah.
And, when we tap into it for that use, that's a tool that we didn't have before as developers.
It's really cool what you can do with it. But you've got to think about what you can do with it.
So for those who aren't familiar with MakerSuite and the PaLM API, can we, I guess, kind of discuss what the two of them are? I mean, the way I've seen it is that MakerSuite is kind of a friendly front end to help you model what model your prompts and model what conversations can look like. And,
exactly.
Build a template, build a prompt template. And then the API is what lets you execute that template from your own code.
I have a question for you, though. Have you noticed that MakerSuite is not as black and white with its responses as the API is? Now, this may have something to do with those tuning things. You said you can tune it.
Right.
Because I've noticed that playing around in MakerSuite, I will get different responses. If I run it like 5 times, I'll get 5 different responses from it. Whereas if I go ahead and do it in the code, now I'm using the pure code settings or whatever that they recommend you use for the API, I seem to get a more static response.
So, and that's a great point. One of the big differences that you see in general as you're building these prompts is that at the bottom of MakerSuite, there's a button that lets you set some of the parameters. And the most important one of those is the temperature.
Yeah, I still haven't been able to figure out what that is supposed to do. I tried turning it up and down, and it reminds me a little bit, because if you've used like Playground AI, the one that does does images, you can turn some stuff up in that, and you'll get a higher or lower percentage of extra limbs.
Right. Well, that is kind of what it is in some ways.
Yeah, basically,
Temperature controls how much randomness it's going to use at any given at every stage of building the reply.
Yeah.
So a temperature closer to 1 means higher randomness. A temperature closer to 0 means lower randomness. There are other parameters you fiddle with and
but why would you ever want it more random?
Well, you'd want it more random when you're generating a reply, because otherwise it sounds very robotic.
Oh,
a temperature like at around 0.1 means it's going to come up with almost exactly the same reply every single time.
See, maybe that's what's wrong with my Google Analytics one.
Yeah.
What you haven't touched on that, my Google Analytics products. Basically, what I did was something that you and I had discussed back in the day for the dialogue flow example, which was, could we hook it up to Google Analytics?
And by hooking it up to Google Analytics, we mean querying Google Analytics, asking Google Analytics questions by asking it questions.
Exactly. So basically, I spent a couple of days with a Python script. I actually had I actually think it took me 2 hours in MakerSuite just to get a prompt that kind of worked, right? So basically, I would say the user would type in something like, give me a report for my events by active users for the last month, right?
Perfectly reasonable request.
Perfectly reasonable request. Now, to use that in the Google Analytics API, we need to break it down. because you need to know some things. You need a start date and end date. Well, the start date and end date, I said the last month. So you need to know the current month, which you helped me with that, because I didn't realize that it doesn't actually know what time it
Let's
is.
touch on that. We'll touch on that in a second. Okay.
Yeah, so it needs to be able to figure out the start and the end date. Then it needs to know the dimensions and metrics that you want, and your property ID, your Google Analytics property IDs.
And the output and the so basically you needed to build a prompt.
Yeah.
That the output of which was a JSON data structure that you were sending to analytics.
I'm not using the actual JSON data structure for Google Analytics, because that is just ugly.
Okay.
So basically I told it to give me one that I can use, and then I can use to parse it into the one that I need, because the one for Google Analytics, I could have done it. I could have taught it how to build the one for Google Analytics, but there's so many nested arrays and objects and stuff. It would have been too difficult.
Well, and I think that's an important point, is that, you don't need to get it into the final data structure. You just need to get it into a data structure that you can work with.
Yeah.
And then you apply some programming. I mean,
that's all I need to do.
Right. We're programmers. We know how to transform one data structure into another data structure.
Exactly.
We don't need an AI to do that for us.
Before, if I wanted, I could have done this. I could have created some kind of crazy regular expression that would read a string and go and look for something like a large number being my property ID and 2 dates. And I could have done that. It probably would have given me a lot of gray hair, but using regular expressions, you could have gone in and maybe figured out what the question was. But the point is, it took me probably about 2 hours to get the first version working. The first version. And it was like I said, first version, because what I was only testing on was, I think I had it looking for 3 metrics and 3 dimensions, and that was it. It had to be one of those 3, or it wasn't going to pick them up. Now, the version I have now actually loads all of the dimensions and metrics available within your property ID for you to use. And that's where it's having issues right now, because I think you said something about the prompt being too big. Right. Because my prompt is huge.
So okay, we'll get to that in a second too. Let's go back to the fact that I love that. So basically what you did was you built a prompt that basically that did value extraction, or what we like to call named entity extraction, or named entity recognition. You built a prompt that said things like, here are the possible parameters that they're going to talk about, and here are the possible metrics, and here's the current date, so that if they ask for date information, you can tell me what that relative date needs to be. And all those sorts of things. And then what you get back is what the user has said in a data structure that you can now turn into another data structure. I feel like that's an incredibly powerful tool that, you're right, we could have built regex before, but they would have been nasty and they would have fallen apart at edge cases. And
no matter, because if I said, if the user said, give me a report for my Google Analytics profile ID for the last month, showing event name by I don't know, active users. But then if another user says, give me active users over the last month for event names, and you would have killed regex. But you know what? This thing can figure it out.
Right. I feel like
it's the same code. I didn't change the code. You can word it however you want. It can figure it out. Most of the time, 90% of the time, it can figure it out. Every now and then it garbles something, and I don't know why.
Well, that's part of the complex nature of these language systems. But so I think one of the other elements of the prompt that I want to pull out is that the prompt itself is a dynamic prompt.
Yes, because what I'm doing first, it's a dynamic prompt, because I could give it a specific start date and end date. But I could also say for the last week or for last year or whatever
no.
there. It can figure it out.
My point more is that you're building a huge prompt. You've got a template here, and as part of that, you're including the user input in that prompt.
Yes.
But you're also including stuff that is dynamically created, like the current date, the possible dimensions that are associated with this project.
One of the first things I do is I go in and I grab your profile ID, because you have to give it the profile ID so it knows which one to go and grab from, right? So what I did was I hooked it up to the Google Analytics admin API, so that it then goes in and it grabs out however many dimensions and metrics that user has access to. So this will also include any custom dimensions or custom metrics that you may have configured, and it grabs those out and it adds the dimensions and metrics to the next prompt that it actually sends over to PaLM, so that PaLM can go ahead and figure it out.
And I think that's kind of an important thing to realize, is that, we think of, we need to build a prompt and we're going to tack on to some part of it, here's what the user said. I think it's important to realize that, no, we don't need to have this prompt be the exact same thing either every time or for every we can tailor that prompt for the specific needs that we have at that moment. And that kind of gets to the other thing that you and I touched on, that we've talked about, that we touched on briefly, that I said we need to get back to. And that's that you can build more than one prompt to extract different information from the same user utterance. And it sounds like what you're saying is you've already got one prompt that extracts the project
profile
ID.
The
profile
ID. Yeah.
So you get that, and then you build another prompt with the same phrase, but with asking for different information.
Yeah, it grabs the dimensions and metrics. Yeah.
So, and
the date, yeah.
And now one of the things we're talking about is saying, well, okay, how do we split that up even further to say, we want one to just find the dimensions and another one to find the metrics. And I think what's neat about that thought to me is, okay, yes, that means it's 2 more API calls. And yes, LLMs can be, they can take a few seconds. But here's a case where you can parallelize those 2 requests. Because you're one doesn't build on the other. You're just trying to extract information that your prompt may be too big to extract, to deal with it all at one time. And I feel like that's a nifty programmer trick that we can do, that we can think about. We just need to wait for all the results back, which is going to take less time than waiting for each one to come back in sequence. So, well, I know you've also come up with some interesting things that you've tossed at me that have definitely not worked. What were some of your experiments there? You mentioned 2 to me this morning.
Oh yeah, 2 this morning. Well, I guess the one that I spent the most time on was 20 questions. Which was, now they have a sample on here where it is the asker or the guesser, and you have to guess what it's thinking of, right? But I switched it. So I'm thinking of an object, and you have to guess what object I'm thinking of. And it does okay for a little while, where because I had to, you got to go back and treat it like a kid. You almost got to explain to the game to it like it was a 2-year-old. You want to guess what I'm thinking of, and the best way, you need to narrow down how, because in the beginning it would just start guessing random objects. Are you thinking of this? Are you thinking? It wasn't bothering to narrow it down, because normally if you and I were going to play, the first thing I say, well, is it alive or is it dead? Is it bigger than a bird box? Is it, and narrow it down. Now it kind of narrows things down, but it's almost like it gets stuck in some kind of a loop somehow, and it assumes that I said yes to one thing and I didn't, and it just like, it'll ask me, does it have to do with sports? And I say no, it doesn't. So it starts asking me everything relating to sports.
I've seen similar issues when I've had, for example, ChatGPT playing Jeopardy.
Oh yeah, I haven't tried games with
I
ChatGPT.
I tried having ChatGPT play Jeopardy, and it would do pretty well. It would, and it would answer, it would phrase things in the form of a question, but it also really liked to keep asking the same category, the same value over and over.
Yeah,
And I'd have to remind it, nope, you asked me that one already.
yeah. Well, you got to remember with this, with MakerSuite, you mentioned that it doesn't have a memory of the last call as
Well,
well.
so MakerSuite, like ChatGPT, does have a chat model that's there.
I haven't had I mean, other than my pizza delivery service, I haven't really had much luck with that one yet.
One of the things, though, that's kind of important to understand about all of them is that they have a limited context window still. It still only has 8K for the scenario prompt plus all of the exchanges back and forth.
Yeah.
There's still a limited amount of space that has to deal with everything. So it kind of loses track of some stuff. And there have been studies recently that have shown that on all of these models, they tend to lose track of the things that are in the middle the most. They're pretty good at using what's at the beginning and what's at the end to come up with a response, but not so good with stuff that's in the middle.
I was hoping to be able to get it to hook it up to my website so that I could have it like field context from, proposed clients, where, asking the questions I was, what language are you using? What API are you working on? What's the issue? Give me your email address, those kind of things. But it seems like it just wants to help the user with its useless help. And that didn't work.
So there, I think we start getting into something that's known as retrieval augmented generation, RAG. Yeah. And we've seen a couple of the other GDEs are talking about RAG type stuff using MakerSuite. Well, using the PaLM API, because it's not usually using the MakerSuite itself so much.
Yeah.
But that I think is the hot topic these days about how to use these tools is with RAG.
Yeah.
So it sounds like you are doing tons and tons of this kind of stuff these days. You're playing with it. You're deeply engrossed in trying out these new tools to use as developers. Any I guess one tip of advice that you would give to people who are just starting down this path, just starting to play with MakerSuite?
Well, I guess the easiest thing to do would be to pick. I mean, if you're going to do it programmatically using PaLM, pick one of the languages that they have samples for already. And I think that's Curl, one of the JavaScript
it's
ones.
Python.
Yeah, Python, Curl, JavaScript, and there's one other one. I can't remember which. Those are the basic ones, but that's not necessarily the only languages that you can use. I have checked, and I know that most of the other languages probably support it as well. PHP does. And
well, I mean, I think the beautiful part is that they're giving you curls so that if you can create a REST request, you'll get, a JSON response in whatever language you use.
The one I did for Google Analytics, I originally did it in Python. And I gave up trying to get a Python web app working because I'm not a webby person. So I ported it over to AppScript, and it works like a charm in AppScript. I write all of the responses directly down into a Google Sheet, and I'm spitting out graphs directly in Sheets.
That's awesome.
So yeah, so it works it works in Google Sheets. It works in in quite a few different languages.
I mean, it works with anything you can do a REST call with.
Yeah, well, yeah, but I think that they've already built the client libraries for it. The client libraries exist. They're not part of cloud, though, I don't think. But the client libraries are there for all of them.
The client libraries are there. Well, they're not part of cloud because cloud has its own parallel version of the PaLM API with Vertex AI.
Oh, yeah, Vertex. I still need to try Vertex one of these days.
You need to try Vertex, and I will get you hooked on LangChain soon.
I don't even know what that is.
LangChain is an abstraction layer that takes care of a pile of stuff for you. And there's a Python version and a JavaScript version. And one of the things that I'm looking forward to doing, that I want to do in the near future with MakerSuite and LangChain, is be able to say, well, one of the neat things I like in MakerSuite is that you can build a prompt. It's got a prompt editor, and in that prompt editor, it's more like a template editor, because you can say, here's a value that I'm going to fill in separately. I think
that's what I use.
I love that feature. MakerSuite's the only product I've seen so far that does that lets you do that, because it really lets you play with prompts easily. But it also lets you save that.
Yeah.
Okay. It saves it in Google Drive.
Oh, it does.
Oh, yeah. Go look in Google Drive. You've got a folder there that contains all your. Don't look now. I want to write a library that lets me load my prompts from Google Drive and apply them. This way I can now use MakerSuite and Google Drive as a content management system. Fiddle with prompts, run them separately using all of the other.
Load it directly. All right, yeah.
Loads it directly. It just, I feel like that's an incredible combination that very few people are exploring right now. But
do you have access to those files?
Yes.
Are you sure?
Yes.
Through the API? Because if they had been smart, they would have used Drive File to create them.
Well, no, they use Drive File.
If they'd used Drive File Scope, then the only one that's going to be able to ask it is their client.
There are ways to deal with that.
Is there? Oh, I
Yes.
haven't met those ways yet. Okay,
but yeah,
you could add a service account in and then hook yourself directly, and you're all set. Yeah, that's cool. I didn't know that, and I'm going to have to go and do that tomorrow. Thank you very much.
Yep, take a look at that. We'll be talking about that more. It has been such fun talking with you, Linda. You're going to play with this some more, and I feel like we're going to have you back on another time to talk about other analytics stuff related to AI. Not just, querying it, but, what analytics do we want to do with AI applications? But I think that's going to have to be for another time.
Because I've asked you already, isn't there some kind of a predictive model that we have access to be able to, because I've got a client right now that I'm extracting Google Analytics data for, and I would love to be able to take some of this data, throw it into some kind of predictive thing and get something back.
So folks that are watching, what is the best way for them to get a hold of you if they want to learn more, or to follow your YouTube videos or stuff that you publish?
Well, I guess the easiest way to get a hold of me is I have Linda Lawton DK is my own website with my CV is up there, and everything else is up there that you need to contact me. Otherwise, I run dimetoe.com. And I'm Dimetoe on Stack Overflow, Linda Lawton on Twitter, and my YouTube channel is Dimetoe Developer Tips, which just hit 2,000 subscribers today.
Fantastic. Congratulations on that.
Yeah.
So folks, we'd love to know, how are you using MakerSuite? How are you using the PaLM API? What other stuff are you discovering about all of this? You can find us in all the various locations, or leave comments below. And Linda, I hope to have you back another time on Two Voice Devs.
Love to be back.
Take care.
Bye.